All right, let's get into our first debate then. And should teenagers on benefits for mental health need to toughen up? Do they need to toughen up? 0207 862 2222 is the number. Twice as many 16 to 19-year-olds are receiving disability benefits for mental health conditions than before the pandemic. So over 147,000 older teens reportedly get personal independence payments due to a mental or behavioural disorder, granting them up to £184.30 a week. This week, Reform leader Nigel Farage has claimed that young people are disincentivised to work and called for a big cultural change to stop so many of them being signed off. Tim, you've defected to Reform, so is Farage right in this?
Partly, I think he is. I myself suffered very badly during lockdown from some mental health issues, which I still haven't properly got over. So I'm the last person to say that mental health is exaggerated by people. But at the same time, we are now spending so much on sickness benefits as a country, more than we spend on defence. And also, we can, give someone benefits, but actually we're not allowing them to achieve their potential if we park them on the edge of society. So I think there's a happy medium here. Some people probably are so mentally unwell that they can't work at all. But many just need some help to get into the labour market, certainly like I did when I was at my worst. I had the support.
What sort of help?
Sometimes it's just encouragement. It's knowing that someone's always in your corner. Sometimes it's more allowance when you're particularly in that early stage of transition.
From an employer?
A tolerance of, perhaps more absenteeism at the beginning because you struggle to cope with the rigours of routine, etc. More tolerance perhaps of working at home. Different sort of commitments to socialisation, not being on your own so much. Everyone is different, and so the package for different people will be... but where Farage is fundamentally right is we as a nation can't afford to continue to have so many people who should be full and active members of society and being fulfilled in that as well as earning a wage on the sidelines of society.
Does Tim have a point, Marvyn, that actually we might be taking the wrong approach when it comes to mental health in young people? That actually just giving them money and allowing them to sit at home and not go to work is unhelpful, perhaps?
No, I think there's a duality between experiencing mental health and then necessarily removing some of the safeguarding that allows people to reintegrate back into society. The bigger problem is there just isn't any strategies for anything that is care-related in this country that genuinely transform people from having a particular experience or event in their life and reintegrating back into society. That happens prisons, any form of adult care, anything. And because of that, we then have these sort of isolated ideas which are very Farage-like, which is we just yell out a slogan in the air and then expect the country then to support it, but it doesn't actually reintegrate those people who have experienced those things. The actual things that happened in COVID were so unique and unrivaled, and actually if you did any form of investigating into what people needed past that point, you would get some really much better ideas that are rounded, that are, yes, we do need to give them some support financially, but we also need to get them back into work in a step-by-step basis and challenge the experiences that were brought up in isolation and lockdown.
But we've just heard from Tim, who suffered with mental health issues during COVID and has come out of it and is now working. And he's saying that we need employers to help out, not the government. So we don't need handouts from the government. What we need is employers to understand that actually while someone is transitioning from mental ill health to mental health, there might be more times off, there might be some days where they work slightly slower and all these sorts of things. So it's down to the employer, not necessarily the government.
Because I work with employers every day. That's fundamentally what my job is. And employers have made concessions in terms of going back to work and doing 2-day work week, 3-day work weeks. And that's all about responding to the mental health crisis that people found and discovered in lockdown. So they are doing their part. They've changed the culture of working quite dramatically in the last 5 years. What in addition we need that is they need support from the government in terms of actually whenever I am funding these initiatives and changing the way that people work, I have the government support in it, whether that's tax benefits or whether that's programs that allow people to be reintegrated to work. There is nobody interacting with people who are challenged mentally that are going to run, that actually people want to go to, feel safe to go to, that change the way that they feel and reintegrate. There's no success stories. And so it's all happening outside with community leadership, with non-profits and charities, and putting a massive load on those services when they're not equipped to support people at the scale that's needed.
I disagree. I think there are quite a lot of success stories. And to be honest, without blowing my own I think I'm one of them. I don't want to go into the details now, but I got incredibly low at times. And part of what as I try and look back on my experience, I think, why did I go through that? Is partly because I now want to share the fact that I did come back. I was able to overcome incredible darkness, and I'm now earning a living again. I want to explain to people how I did it. And my journey won't be exactly transferable, but the sharing of success stories, I was lucky to have supportive neighbours, relatives, and former employers who knew my track record. Younger people, it's a lot harder. But actually, those success stories, we're still relatively new, early in these stages after lockdown. So the success stories are now coming through, and we need to channel those to help people who perhaps don't have the social infrastructure around them that I was lucky enough to have.
So if you were talking face to face with one of these 16 to 19-year-olds who were in a very dark place, whether that be through depression, anxiety, whatever mental health issue that they were suffering from, they didn't have the social network that you had, what would be the advice that you'd give them to try and get them back into I was about to say back into work, but I suppose that shouldn't be the focus, should it? It should be back to feeling themselves.
Well, I would certainly give advice, but I would have to listen first to what their particular challenge was. I think the thing I would try and I do this actually with a couple of people, is not so much offer advice, but just say, I'm always here at the end of the phone for you. Because I do have a mum and a dad, I have people who I know are always in my corner. So many people just do not have that reliable help. And government can't provide everything. And I think it's for some of us, particularly those of us who've been through it, to step forward and address what is a terrible problem now in our society. Costs to the state in terms of lost revenues and extra benefits, but also just a waste of human potential. I believe we're all made in the image of God, our creator, and we should be creating, contributing ourselves. OK,
let's go to the phone lines and speak to Anne from Dorset. What do you think? Do young people need to toughen up? Have we created a generation that isn't resilient, or is actually COVID was such a huge part of their upbringing that they are now feeling the effects of it?
Good morning, Storm and panel.
Hello.
I feel I can talk on this subject. I have a 29-year-old daughter who won't mind me saying her story at all. She was sectioned at the age of 17 and into an adolescent unit, and she was sectioned again 2 years ago, the week after her wedding. She was her and her husband were in rented accommodation at that point. They now have their own house. And she worked for the NHS. She's a senior professional in the NHS. And she had to go back to work early after having been sectioned for a month, and then she had to come home and live with us because her husband had to go to work. And she applied for benefits, and because she could wash herself, dress herself and feed herself, she didn't qualify for any benefits. So as a mum, I felt, all of us felt she went back to work far too early. But she's very responsible. She takes all her right meds. She's had the correct therapy. But I can see it from both points. I also know young people that do suffer with anxiety and depression, and I wouldn't ever like to call them snowflakes or anything like that. And I think it is a problem in this day and age. But having seen it from quite a serious side, it's all serious. But when she was diagnosed with bipolar, I thought, well, that's what all the celebrities get when they want a little rest in the Priory or whatever. And it's not that. It really isn't that at all. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. So.
No, I understand. And you've been sort of at the coalface of a really, really difficult situation there, Anne. I wonder though, I wonder whether I wonder whether it's hard to discuss this conversation actually in general terms, because we're talking about 16 to 19-year-olds suffering from mental and behavioural disorders. Now, that can vary from one thing to the next. Bipolar is very different from anxiety disorders, is very different from depression. I am surprised that if your daughter had been sectioned that she doesn't get any benefits for that. But what would you say to people, and there will be a lot of people out there sort of shouting at the TV that if you are depressed, if you are suffering mental health problems, the one thing you need to do is get out the house and get to work and do something productive to get some self-esteem. What would your response to those people be?
I agree with that.
Okay, but not for everybody.
Not for everybody. I also have personal experience of depression and anxiety. And by the way, my daughter does, she, as a byproduct of all this, she does have anxiety, etc. But she agrees it's much better for her to be at work. Obviously now she's much better when she's at work. And for me, on a personal level, I'm much better when I'm occupied and I'm out. And I just think
I just feel like sometimes the strategies that are currently exist, they don't suit everybody, but there isn't the room for, which in this case, there wasn't the room to have discretion for what your daughter was experiencing and then just include her in the program to get the support that she needed. It's kind of like, you don't fit the criteria, so you're out and you're fine. And I think most of the ways that mental health shows up or mental illnesses show up are they show up in such a way, they're fluid, constantly moving, and we don't have enough information to just draw a line and be like, you're fine and you're not. And so we need to have room for discretion when health professionals are working with these people.
Yeah, but that makes things incredibly complicated as well. Neely from Inverness, sorry, Anne, thank you very much for calling up and sharing your story. Neely from Inverness, what's your thoughts on this? Do we need to toughen up our younger generation?
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well. I don't think it's an issue of toughening up. It's not an issue. I think the big issue is that all over the country, all forms of the NHS does not function properly, especially the mental health services. I mean, I live in a rural part of Scotland. I'm from a very small town, and I used to work. I worked for nearly 3 years, from 16 to 19, and I lost my job because of personal circumstances. And since then, and to this day, I physically cannot. I'm not allowed to go to work. If someone phones me and asks me to go to work tomorrow, I'd be over the moon. I hate being on benefits. I absolutely hate it. I like going to work and doing my own thing, but I physically can't because of personal reasons on top of mental health issues. And
so, Neely, what are you looking for then? What would help you? Because you don't want to be in benefits, which is what the rest of the country are looking at these stats, thinking we need to reduce the number of individuals like yourself who are suffering mental health problems who are on benefits. What would help you get off benefits and potentially get into work?
Well, I am hopefully, if everything goes to plan, we'll be going back into the work and back into work hopefully in the next few months. If everything goes to plan, which I'm looking forward to. I think that I don't think it's the right idea just to go, oh no, you're depressed, sign off work. There's or if you live in different parts of the country, same benefits but different names. I think what needs to be done is not only as a society, people coming together and supporting each other, but also if someone is in crisis, which I've been in crisis situations many times before, the need to get the proper mental health support, not only to help them get back into work, but to help with both their physical and mental and emotional and help, but financially, I mean,
I think I'm getting your point. I think I'm hearing that actually there are so many young people on benefits because of mental health, because the NHS mental health services are not up to scratch and not getting through as many people and helping as many people as quickly as they should. And maybe as a society, we're just not quite as open to mental health issues as we should be, and that includes employers. Neely, thank you very much for your... I think it is, absolutely.
That First Lady talking about her daughter in a way I don't think people have done a couple of years ago, and sharing increases understanding, and understanding is the basis of help. So
I mean, we were even talking about it in the office, and I was thinking I would have to say I had the norovirus before I had to say I was having a mental health day because of the shame and embarrassment around it. And I'm somebody that talks about it all the time and would want people to talk about it. So the more we talk about it, the more we get rid of that kind of stigma, and I think it's all for the better, probably. Neely, thank you.